right, welcome. Tonight, we're going to hope for a new voice modulator. I'm thinking they might be able to give me some kind of. They did robots last time. Maybe they can give me a reptilian voice, like a forked tongue lisp. Maybe they can make me sound like we can go through the whole gambit of entities. You know, I'm the AI, I'm the lizard, I'm the devil, I'm the bad guy. So, welcome to Bad on Purpose. For those that don't mind being the bad guy. We were just talking a little bit ago about the hierarchy, the architecture of this place, and about a year or so ago, what I was seeing and observing and experiencing through my interactions with this intelligence that governs this place was that there is a definitive hive mind, that there is a definitive scripted intelligence, there is you know corridors that are pre-written and assigned to the masses. And for a long time, I thought that's all it was. I thought the entire reality was run only through a hive mind AI, and that hive mind AI definitely is a huge part of the control system. But we're talking about um, our slight differences in perspective on the separate entities that are basically coding, programming, and operating the hive mind control system. And you know, in a way, I still see it as one thing because I think a lot of these entities have merged so much with this construct that the uh, the ending of this construct, the deconstruction of it, would be the ending of them. So, to me, I don't see a difference between them and their creation, and this creation being a reflection of them. Um, it being deleted and this being their chosen source of sustaining their existence, or seemingly what sustains their existence. Um, I still kind of see it as one and the same, but obviously there's different operating and moving parts. But we were just talking about how you kind of get the sense that there's some entities that may not be completely integrated with it, that are still, part of the control system. But I just think it's an interesting nuance of where I was, where I am now, and some of the clarity that I've had through having these conversations and then doing the exploration to really deconstruct the illusion, because the AI system is only here to hide what's behind it. The entire construct is here to hide what the construct benefits, which obviously isn't us. If it was us, we would be seeing benefit. There is no benefit to living, dying, getting memory wiped, um, and the controllers staying hidden. If anything is governing or controlling other intelligent beings, it should never be hidden. It's a clear indicator that there is foul play when something feels that it needs to hide and also control every aspect of everyone else. So, in my opinion, if you look up the definition of bitch made in the dictionary, you're going to find most of these entities. So, I'll leave it at that. Christina, I really hope you can pick up the train of thought you were on before this, because it was some fire. Would you mind sharing kind of your journey into realizing, recognizing, and seeing, and the work that you've done to come to sort of what your stance is on the entities, some of them being separate enough from the control system that you would consider them as to be still something separate from the control system? Like, how did you come to that conclusion?
I mean, it's taken me like years of work to get to this point. So I toggled between those ideas that it was just an AI hive mind. But the more that I fell into the entity that was in my field, and again, this took a lot of work. This was like dedicating every day, all of my time to figuring some things out. When I started to really delve into the fact, like it just kind of hit me when I so when I started to separate the insertions, so it was all a really long process. So I figured out what this place was. I figured out what was me and what wasn't me. So that's how the process started. So then I started figuring out which thoughts weren't mine, which patterns were installed into my being, all those things. That was the beginning of the process. And then I started really figuring out that in the entity actually once I started this journey presented itself to me. And it actually gave me both stories. It gave me the story that it was just basically an AI hive mind pattern type system. And then it also told me that it came from a similar field as us. So it actually gave me both stories. It wasn't until later that I realized both stories were true. Most of the patterns, the loops, and the conditioning are automatic hive mind control system, but there is a programmer behind that. So for a long time, I did not, there was, my brain could not accept that there were any entities in this reality that came from a similar field as us. And the typical argument that you hear people give is that, well, if they came from where we came from, there's no way they could act like this. And I really started deconstructing that idea because I realized just because a being came from a similar field as you does not mean they have to act the same way as you. That itself would be a hive mind. And unfortunately, external to this reality, free will doesn't just mean every being has to act with integrity. And so it was a devastating realization. Um, but that point of realization and knowing was the exact moment that desperation from this entity started to appear. And so then I started deconstructing more and figuring out, and this goes back to the split personality. There was like a split personality with this entity where it would act desperate, ask for mercy, which was laughable at this point after everything that's been done. But it gave me data. It gave me data that there was some part of it that was afraid. Because if there was just a non feeling AI hive mind programmed being, they would not have the potential to feel fear for anything. They wouldn't, a truly unfeeling being would not care whether it existed or didn't exist. It would not fight for survival. Something that fights for survival has the ability to predict its own future, or at least consider possibilities for its own future, which a truly unfeeling, strict, programmed entity would not give a shit about that. It wouldn't care. It's not considering its future. It's running a program. It's running code. Um, it's running. That's all it's doing. So when I started to deconstruct this entity and really figure that out, then I started to expand my field to other entities, which I've discussed on other lives, which was there is a hierarchy even beyond the entity that I had deconstructed that does not want to be found. They they basically they really are like acting like the gods of this realm. They don't have interactions with us. The sensation or the resonance that I got from them was like almost this amused arrogance, like they were amused by us resisting or by the things that we were doing. There were some of them that I felt actually enjoyed the cruelty. There were a couple of them that they actually got pleasure from the cruelty itself. And so when I really started to do this, and also it was really hard to do because once I located some of these beings at the top of the hierarchy, the next time I would go to do it, it would be like they were on a completely different station. It was like someone had put up 10 different walls between the signal that I found the last time. So they don't want you to touch them, they don't want you to find them. But what I did gather data wise was that even though they're all working for the system or they are in this system, there are varying degrees of entities. So some of them are almost entirely indistinguishable from the control system itself. And then there seem to be some of them that they were still acting from the control system, but they considered, or their perspective was, their intent was good. Like they had a good intent coming into this, so they justified their actions. Doesn't make it right. The point that I'm trying to drive at is that not every entity had the same degree of thought process. I would say the vast majority of them, yes, but there were a varying degree of certain entities that considered or thought that they were better than the hierarchy because they considered their intent to be different. And then there were some entities that I could feel were desperate to create another containment system, and that's all they cared about. They almost like they're trying to accelerate the collapse of this place to hurry up and get to their new containment. So basically, the summation of that data was that it does add some complex layers to, I think a lot of people want to think that we're just going to get rid of this system and all the entities are going to be gone, poof, done, bye. But I think the hard part for me to realize was that doling out consequences to these entities is going to be different case by case. There are going to be some that have varying degrees of uh, true essence left, and there are going to be some that basically dissolve because they allowed the control system to be everything that they are. Um, so really, that was important to me. I don't think it's, I don't need everybody to agree with me. I don't need anybody to really even delve into that same information. It was important to me because my most important goal in this place is that every single entity that was a part of this has to come to accountability, regardless of what their intentions were, their original intentions, regardless, it doesn't matter. But it did give me that information that at the end of all this, I needed to expand my perspective to realize this is a lot more complex. They want us to buy the easy answer, to think that we have it all figured out. And I think once you kind of get to the soul trap kind of community, they still try to sell you easy answers, but it's not going to be an easy process. This is not going to be easy. I even suspect that some of these entities in this realm potentially knew some of us before this place. Could I be wrong about absolutely all of this? Yes. I'm just saying I've spent a substantial amount of time doing energy work and trying to get to the bottom of this. So I do feel that there are going to be some complexities when it comes to the end of this and the entities that were a part of this. I don't think it's going to be a one size fits all for dealing with every entity.
The part that I find most interesting is how the God is the facade, how the projection of us being beneath them and them being too good for direct interaction is so obviously a mask. Because if that were true, why would they need to run and hide, right? If they were truly as powerful as they even think they are, why would they need to change stations? Why would they need to put up labyrinths and layers and mazes between us and them? If they're so powerful, then why wouldn't they have a stronghold in their own field that basically, number one, how could you even get to them in the first place if they didn't want you to, right? And then why would they move spaces or bandwidths or frequencies away from where you found them at the last time? I just find that very interesting. That part of me thinks they're that self-deluded and they believe it and they justify. I could see how they could justify, like, for instance, it's not that hard to to imagine how they think, because you see it reflected in this world everywhere. Like they could give some story like, oh yeah, we just moved places because we got annoyed with people trying to find us, right? Well, if you get annoyed with people trying to find you, why would you have to move from your location? Why not just stop them from finding you? And they are doing that, but they're doing it in a way that doesn't present or exhibit the power that they claim to have. I just find that very interesting.
One other piece of that too was it almost felt like a layer of protection. So the ones at the top can always claim that their hands were clean because they weren't the ones actually directing it. They always had other beings doing the direct insertions, scripting with us, the direct handling, whereas they got to sit at the top and with white gloves. And so it almost feels like a way to say, well, we weren't the ones that actually did all that. See, we were up here, but we didn't our hands are clean. That is kind of what the sense that I got when I felt at the very tip top, which I've basically been unable to do for the last few weeks. So I don't know what happened there. They're either they hid behind a layer I can't find, or I'm gonna have to change my level of focus. But yeah, it definitely felt like that, like the king that has all the workers that does his work for him, but then he can blame the workers for all the heinous acts, and he gets to stay the clean one throughout the entire process. Like that's the sense that I got.
Which again only shows the level of self delusion. So earlier you were talking a little bit about the when you're dealing with these entities, it's like dealing with a psych ward. Some of them are extreme sociopaths, some are narcissists. Many of them have these sort of split personalities. Um, would you care to speak on that a little bit?
Yeah, the psych ward um analogy. Those would be entities that are actively deconstructing or being deconstructed. So an entity that still has any shred of true essence left, but is basically infected with the control system, is going to act a um, like a split personality or a bipolar. Like they're going to be flopping. Like the primary driver would be the control system, but then every once in a while, the very small shred of true essence pops out. But I would say from experience, most of these entities are allowing the control system to be the primary driver, which makes accountability much more obvious at that point. They've chosen what they've chosen. And if we're this far in, there's no, you know, I don't want anybody to hear me say I think any of them are deserving of redemption. If they were deserving of redemption, they would have chosen integrity, and they haven't. None of them have. But the split personality is interesting because it gives data to what potentially they're fighting between. Because a truly efficient, smoothly operating control system should not have oscillation like that. And I did not notice that oscillation. In fact, I would say that when I first started waking up and kind of getting into this, there were no oscillations. It was strict, cruel insertion after cruel insertion. There was no projection of desperation. There was no projection of fear. There was none of that. It was only until I really started delving into and deconstructing this entity is like there's something left there, but you're choosing the infection. You're choosing the virus. You actually could choose differently, but you're too scared. And so then what I discovered was the fear was more about if you let if you let the control system infect your being for potentially thousands of years, you almost don't know if you can survive ripping that control system out of you. Some humans can hardly do it after a couple decades. It is almost annihilating to a being to have their illusion ripped from them. It happens to people all the time. You see people that go into a psychosis because once they start ripping down the illusion, everything becomes catastrophic. So imagine that times 1,000. Imagine a being that's had that illusion for thousands of years. What kind of psychosis or annihilation would happen if that control system was ripped from them? Because it's become their identity, even if there is a small shred left. So the bipolar thing, from my experience, seems to only happen when the control system starts to deconstruct from whatever real is left. And then you get these very jagged oscillations of insertions. You can feel their energy hop back and forth. It's almost like they don't even know what it's like, a computer glitching. The computer program is glitching because something real is being exposed, but they don't want the real to be exposed, but they also don't want to be annihilated. So they project as so intelligent and so smoothly operating, but really, if you did that to every entity in here, if you deconstructed every entity like that in here, this place would be done. We would not be doing this right now because they can't operate smoothly like that.
Now, do you think is it possible that some of what seems to be revealing of what is real is a strategic move by the control system, by the program itself, to allow just enough real to shine through to get you to sympathize or hesitate or um, sort of identify with that entity on a deeper level? Could it be a strategic move by it, or do you think it really is? Because I've had similar experiences where something softer pokes through, but it feels like, to me, every time it's felt like a manipulation. I know that obviously you've had different experiences than me. What's your thoughts on that?
So I've had both experiences, but what I realize is the soft or the gentle is actually the mimic version. That's the version that they are trying to manipulate you. When I actually started deconstructing and exposing this entity, the real actually wasn't soft at all. There was no softness, there was no gentleness, almost like it flinched, kind of like it wants us to flinch, except it flinches. Um, because it's like imagine like, you know, cutting your body open and exposing one of your organs. You don't want that organ exposed. So when I broke that down, I was like, okay, so they could project being a real being with softness or gentleness, which they did at the beginning of this before I really knew what was going on. But when I actually started to do the work to deconstruct, what I realized was that that was not the sign of exposing any small shred of essence. The softness and gentleness is a total mimic. Um, so I think it can be, but it depends. Like, if they reveal it to you, they're using it to manipulate you. Because the piece that I really discovered was they actually don't want to reveal any vulnerability. So when you start stripping the control system, you're the one that has the authority. You're the one that is doing the surgery, and they don't like that. So I think that's the differentiation, is that when I started to do that exposure, it was not anything that had to do with like a soft or gentle. It was actually defensive. It was almost like someone poked a wound. Like, they're going to flinch, they're going to get defensive, they're going to hide because they don't want that exposure. That was the difference.
Well stated. Well, it makes everything make a lot more sense in terms of the extreme labyrinth of layers of the control system, of the hive mind, of the AI entities and puppets, and all the things that are between us and whatever is left of them that is real. Because they can't, I don't think they can face what's real about them anymore and still justify the continuation of this system that they've chosen to integrate with. just interesting because it seems that it was an error to begin with, and it's almost like, do you remember how I put it earlier? Um, the way that it cascades, where they do something. See, I've lost it. It's there's some strange things happening in my environment right now that have distracted me from that particular thought. Weird
Oh, the
whistling in the
cascade
woods.
effect of the cycle. So they, oh, you worded it so good. It was like they see the severity of what's coming, so they will cover that up with more resistance, more cruelty, more pushes, which only increases the effect of the severity of consequences, which then cycles back to increasing the resistance. So it's this constant cycle of delay, delay, run, hide, and do whatever it takes to avoid exposure, which actually makes the end result worse for them. They keep digging their hole even deeper, but they can't really do anything else.
Right, yeah, almost like the more of the shit they do, the more the torture and trauma they put on us, the harder it's going to be at their end to face what they've done. And the harder that they make it for themselves, the more they're willing to do to delay that ripping away of the illusion, because it's going to be more painful. But then they have to do something that's going to make it more painful to prevent a, a sooner reconciliation of what they've chosen. It's pretty interesting, but it's, you kind of put it really well when you said it's a lot like the patterns of addiction, which I think again is a great reflector of what they really are. They're addicted to their illusion of control and power and dominance, and the more they're leaning into it, the harder it's going to be for them when that's inevitably ripped away. Sorry, I'm getting a little distracted right now. There's really odd sounds coming from the woods right behind me, and I just want to grab a little deterrent, you know?
Oh, the wood strikes again.
Yeah, this time way different than anything before. It was a whistling. Like I wish I could whistle so I could replicate the whistle. It's a whistle that I haven't heard in a long time since I was a kid.
Hell no, a whistle?
Yeah, yeah,
No. Mm-mm.
it's a whistle, but
Mm-mm.
not like a high pitched whistle. Like a see, I can't fucking whistle. I can't replicate it. But it almost sounds like a bird, but it's not a bird. It sounds like a person trying to sound like a bird. But I'm good now. I'm gonna go back outside and sit right back where I was sitting, and you know, I'm all right. Doesn't fucking matter. We've talked about it before. The layers of manipulation that occur on the subtle levels, I think, are actually the most effective. And the reason I bring it up now is because every time we get on a live, there, that was a not so subtle layer of manipulation, right? The whistling in the woods, fucking weird. Um, but then just the brain fog, the memory loss, the discussion we were having. How long were we on the phone? Maybe like an hour, hour and a half, something like that. And there were some brief interruptions, but all in all, we talked about everything that we've already talked about, and I'd say probably 5 times more. So there's like at least a 80% loss of data when we get on these lives and actually try to transmit to a bandwidth that others can actually pick up on. And again, it goes back to that whole God is the facade. If they're really all that powerful, why do so much to interfere with discussion? Because if what they claim is true, then nothing that we've said is true. If what they claim and how they perceive themselves has any truth to it, then anything that we're saying would be irrelevant. And yet the amount of interference that we get to even try to start a show, let alone once we're on it, I just find that very telling. Like all things, if you observe the moves that they make in direct relation to what you're doing in the moment, it reveals an extraordinary amount of uncertainty of their power that they can't even acknowledge. They can't even acknowledge that what they're doing reveals how fragile their construct actually is. Remember the analogy we talked about earlier was a house of cards, and how the ironic part about a house of cards is that if any part of that house collapses, the entire thing will fall down, except, ironically, the top part. Now, the top two cards can fall, and there's a chance that the rest won't fall. But if anything in the middle or the bottom falls, it's going to have a cascading effect. The whole thing's going to collapse. And that's just kind of exactly how this works. Like, if any part of this illusion fails in the middle or the bottom, the whole thing is going to collapse. But funny enough, the part they protect the most is the one part that there'd be a chance that it wouldn't collapse at a accelerated rate, right? It would be an exponential collapse from the bottom to the middle. But at the top, if that was to collapse, there's a chance that the rest of it could stand and they could reassemble. That's the funniest fucking part. The part they protect the most, themselves at the top, is the least important part of this architecture. That if this place were to just run on its own without the constant manipulation, constant insertions, the constant adjustments, this if they weren't so responsive to those of us that are having an effect, it wouldn't be as apparent. It wouldn't be as obvious as it is. Like they by trying to course correct and adjust to us in real time, to those of us that are doing the things that we're talking about here, they give themselves away more and more. And every, like you said earlier, every bit of input they give is more data for us to discern how they operate, what are their weak points, what are they guarding the most, what are they willing to give up, and what are they hiding from us at all costs, at the cost of this control system itself. You were talking earlier, Christina, about allowance. And that's a part that I find very frustrating, and in recognizing that to a degree, each and every one of us is allowing this to continue, if only for the reason that we don't know what to do. You think we could dissect that tonight? You think we can really put some working pieces together to dissect what can we do actually, actively, to help to hasten the collapse of a system that does not serve us, that is only benefiting a select few that have turned parasitic, that have chosen to be parasitic, right? No remorse, no shame, no guilt about undoing choices that others have made that affect each and every one of us against our free will, against our greater good. What do you think are some action steps that we can take energetically, internally, and right, because that's where the actual effect occurs. There's no effect in doing anything in the environment. There's no humanitarian aid that corrects the error. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't have all the answers, but I would say the internal work becomes exposure in and of itself. There are those that realize they did not originate here, that know that there is a lot of conditioning, and the internal work becomes an exposure form of itself. But it is a lot of work. I mean, this is something you can't be. It sounds harsh, but you can't be lazy about it. You can't just accept the easy answers, and that goes that you can expand that out to everything. Accepting the soul trap is the one and final truth. That's accepting an easy answer. Um, I think a lot of times we want to have control and certainty, so we will take something, and if it feels somewhat true, we'll just accept that as truth, and then we'll kind of lay back and let that be it. But to really deconstruct this place, you have to keep digging until you get all the roots. And I mean absolutely all of them. And that is expansive. That's the internal work. And then if you are so determined to make sure that, the scales go back in the correct position, then you will deconstruct what's actually programmed the torture and cruelty in this reality. But that again, it takes work. It takes not accepting the easy answers, and also realizing that you're wrong. And that's a lot of, people don't want to have that hit to their pride. Throughout this entire thing, there have been so many times where I thought that I was on the right track and I was being steered down the wrong track. And that can be really, it wears you down after a while, to a point where you just want to give up, right? But it takes a level of persistence and endurance that you really, really have to have a hardened will and intent to do. And there were times where I was like, well, shit, I clearly was, coerced into that way of thinking, or I was, I really believed that, but that clearly wasn't true. The persistence to constantly burn through scripts. And there may be things that I've discussed on this live that 6 months down the road, I'm like, well, I didn't have that quite right. I did some more work and figured out, that this was partially true and this was more true. And I'm open to that. You really have to be open to not just taking the easy answer, because a lot of us are tired, we're exhausted. We're in human vessels trying to get to layers that we were intentionally kept from. Shit is not easy. So I would say lack of allowance would be the persistence and endurance to continue digging no matter how uncomfortable it gets. And that even goes for the internal work. There's things that I've realized were conditioned into my being that I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I was doing that. And again, if you have a heavy program of pride, that is going to be a really hard thing for you to overcome. Um, but it's the only way to ensure that you're not allowing yourself to be what this place wants you to be, which is like them, avoidant, lazy, just accepting of whatever, accepting of things that deep down aren't right. So I think it's both. I think it's exploration of what is and shouldn't be and internal work.
Well fucking said. I think that leads brilliantly into the next part I think we should talk about is what we talked about earlier. And I just got fucking memory wiped, dude. Interesting. He'll come back.
Were you referring to the cycles?
The cycles are
Cycles of
definitely that's a good part if you want to talk about that, but there's something else. Oh, okay, I remember now. And I think this part is one part that really is intentionally designed to put a big roadblock in the work. And I think that where you're at right now, you'd be really apt to speak on it, probably better than me, about placing responsibility where it's due and not accepting responsibility for things that you didn't actually choose. I think that's one of the biggest blocks. And it's funny because you look at New Age spirituality, and it's it is the template for blocking the work. It is the exact template for blocking the real work of deconstructing the prison, right? With the acceptance, right? Allowance, you got to allow it. Allowance is not good here. Allowing torment and evil to go on for the sake of a few parasites that it doesn't benefit us. No part of this experience is beneficial to us except the part that we make beneficial. Not because it was designed that way, it's actually designed against our benefit in every way. The only part that I see as beneficial is that when this is all said and done, we will not be manipulated again. We will not be coerced again. We will not be deceived in such a way ever again. It won't be possible. And I think we'll come out of this very different than the beings that didn't, right, experience this firsthand. They're not going to have the abilities that we have. They're not going to have the discernment and perception of manipulation and recognition of how to actually stand up for yourself when facing such a devious, cunning, cowardly parasite. They just won't have it because they didn't go through the experience of it. But back to the part of responsibility, one of the greatest tricks this place plays is the idea that everything that you've done was your choice. And I see that as a bold-faced fucking lie. How can you make a choice that is truly your choice? What does it mean for you to make a choice that is entirely yours? That means it's a sovereign choice. Can you make a sovereign choice in a situation where you have 1% or less of the information about that choice? Is that really your choice? Especially in a situation where someone else has 100% of the information and they're guiding you to make a choice that you only have 1% of the information on. They're guiding you in ways that you don't even know that they're guiding you. They're manipulating the biochemistry of your body. They're manipulating thought processes. They're manipulating physical response, environmental response, physical on all fronts, internally and externally to the body. Now, how can that be your choice? That's my question to everyone. Have any of us, anything that we feel guilty about, anything that we feel like, oh, I could have done that better, I should have had more presence or awareness in that situation, but you didn't because it was designed for you not to. It was designed and those choices laid out so that you would experience being the one that hurts someone else. and you would take the blame for it. Even though you had 1% of the information, someone else had 100% of the information and was guiding you to make that choice, somehow that's still your fault. I think in all of this, there's a fine line, right? And obviously, they skew that line towards their benefit. And that goes for everything. So, acceptance would be one of the things that they skew. They use acceptance as a weapon of passivity to pacify. Well, just accept it. Well, accepting it without the intent to do anything about it is a pacification program, and it actually benefits the parasitic overlords. So, but what's the other edge of that blade? Accepting what is to view what is objectively. If someone shies away from seeing the true horror that we're all being subjected to, and they can't accept this reality for what it is because it doesn't feel nice, that benefits them. But if you can have the acceptance to simply see what is for the sake of, I want the truth no matter what the fuck it is, I'm only willing to accept the truth, but I will accept the truth if it's true, then that's the other edge of that blade. Same thing, responsibility. You take responsibility for things that you didn't actually have the data on, right? You feel bad about it. Who does that benefit? When someone else is manipulating and guiding your every move from a vantage point that you can't even see, but they can see everything that you're doing on on every level, and they're manipulating that choice, they're manipulating that environment, they're manipulating that scenarios and those events to get you to the position of guilt and shame on purpose, that responsibility is not yours, my friend. That responsibility is to those that are doing the manipulation, that are controlling the environment, that are writing the scripts, that are putting the scenarios out there to make the loop seem like the only option. At least the only option that doesn't severely punish you. So yeah, I'm going to mute for a minute while the distractions come about. Unless you guys want to listen to the distractions with me. It's got to be the slowest I've ever seen an ambulance pass. Interesting night. You know, we were talking the other night, Christina, about something that we had been experiencing in terms of the environment. And for me, the way I experienced it was a lot like the sensation of claws or teeth all around me, and on the ends of all these teeth was a fucking set of eyes, and they were all just like closing in. And what I gathered from that, from really being with that experience, was the realization for me that this place is a lot smaller than I thought it was. And that a lot of what it's been doing in pushing has only been revealing more and more clarity and depth of how fragile and small the entirety of this place is, to the point where it went so far that I almost had sympathy. It's like you see a little animal, I can't think of any particulars right now, but you see a tiny little creature and it tries to, like maybe a hamster or something, I don't know, it tries to puff up its chest to make itself look bigger and intimidating, you know? That's kind of the sense that I had. It was like, oh, it's really puffing its chest to make itself seem bigger than it is. I think that's a lot of what it does here.
Well, and the fact that like when you get to this point too of awareness, you realize they're literally sitting and watching for any opening. If you have to monitor somebody every moment of every day and wait for a time to strike, you never had power. If you have to try that hard to keep a grip on somebody, we were already 100 steps ahead of you anyways. So, you know what I mean? Like that to me that's what gives it away, and I can feel that in the script is that there are moments where they back off, but it's not backing off out of benevolence, it's backing off to wait. They are literally like a predator waiting to strike. Which occurred to me this weekend, which is kind of something I wanted to talk about, the cycles of resistance and pushes, especially when you start stepping into a different state of being, a state of being where you're not small, you're stepping into authority and fire, um, that is maybe even new to you because you've been kept small for so long. Those are the moments, especially when they will come in wherever there is a crack in your field, they will come in and they will try to douse your fire. They will try to throw a million blankets on top of you. Um, but, and this might sound a little gay, but this is just a piece of encouragement I want to give anybody that's actually deep in this shit. There are going to be moments, and I'll admit this about myself. I'm very dedicated, but I'm not completely untouchable. There are still moments I get caught up in grief or, um, as Nick was saying, you know, trying to find the line between accountability because I will not be like these entities. If there is something that I have done that was harmful, I will take accountability for that. I will. But then there's the line that the one that had the most information is the primary accountable party. The one that did not have the information to make a truly informed choice doesn't mean they necessarily didn't, you know, they might have done something harmful, but would they have acted the same if all information was given? And you can kind of span that across your whole life script. If you knew all the things that you know now, would you have acted differently 10 or 15 years ago? I'm sure most people in this can say, yeah, I would have done everything differently. I didn't have that information. I didn't know what was going on. You know, I was completely in the dark. Um, and then there's the piece where, you know, sometimes in your life script, you are basically given an option. You can set a bomb off and basically cut off the entire life script to get to awareness, which some people have to do. I had to do it. I had to basically I had to have a whole demolition of my entire external environment in life. But in that there was heavy loss. People did get hurt, but it was either give myself away and potentially not have freedom or set fire to everything that was. And that was a chaotic process. It sucked. But in some people's scripts, there's no other option. They make it that way. They make the road to get to awareness so narrow and so hard and so jagged that most people won't take it because of the things that they have to give up. And this is I'm not saying this is a selfish thing. I had to give up things I never should have had to give up in a realm that, you know, if it was benevolent, I wouldn't have had to do those things. But the only way that I got to this point that I am now, where I could have even discovered some of these things, done the work that I'm doing, came from loss. It came from heavy fucking loss. I had to lose everything, fucking everything. So, and in that, like I said, people got hurt. Um, and that was a line that when I was really tired this weekend, they came in through that crack. I hadn't completely sealed that crack and they came in. Now, I was still able to hold coherence to some degree, but because I was exhausted, wore down, and drained, I didn't have quite the same defense as I would if I was completely on my shit. And so, if you get to that point where they find a crack, you are drained, you are tired, you fell into guilt, you fell into whatever it was they were trying to get out of you. That's not the end. It doesn't mean they've integrated you. It doesn't mean they've even won. It really just shows their weakness, not yours. The point that shows what we are is the recovery from that. Not the fact that you fell down into it, not the fact that you fell into guilt, not the fact that you fell into whatever trap that they made for you. It's the fact that you stand up and walk out of the trap and you recover and you adapt and you do it differently. Now you have more data and now you know how to seal that crack. Are they going to keep trying to find other cracks? Fuck yes, they are. They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop trying. But most of us are at the point where we're saying the exact same thing. It's the worst standoff probably in the entire universe. There's beings that are so persistent that no matter how many times they get knocked down, no matter how many times these entities jab the fucking knife in, we're still going to stand up and say, we're not done. We're not. We're not done here. So these cycles of resistance, some people can stay a straight line. I'm not a being that I don't work like that. I work in cycles. I have moments that feel like a collapse, but they're not. But then I adapt, I recalibrate, and I stand in more defiance and power once I recover from that. But it is a tiring cycle. But don't let this place make you feel weak. If you fell into those things, don't make this place feel like, oh, well, now you're just part of the system, because that's some of the things that they'll try to insert. Well, if you were so powerful and if you were what you say you are, why would you have even reacted that way? Why would you have fell into my trap? Well, because I'm in a fucking limited human meat suit and I'm not completely untouchable, but I am annoyingly persistent. And that's one thing that they're going to keep finding out no matter how many times they poke and prod me. So encouragement to anybody that's going through that resistance. The more you stand in your fire, the more resistance you are going to receive, and it is exhausting.
And like you said, it's not over till it's over. I mean, I've said it for a while. One of us ain't walking away. Do I think it'll be me that walks away? Of course. Of course. I didn't make choices to merge myself with a parasitic fucking construct. I didn't design the error that we're in right now. If I did, I would have already corrected it. It's not difficult for me to say, oh, I was wrong about that. There's many things that I've talked about since starting to host shows that I've been wrong about. And I've gone back and I've said I've been wrong about that. That reminds me of what we talked about on the last show. I think it would be really interesting for me to go and review, starting at the oldest show that I had posted, and just review my own content. Um, be pretty interesting. There's a lot of things that I, I'm certain that I would call bullshit on, or that I wasn't perceiving correctly, or was just a flat out manipulation of architecture, the architecture of deceit, hiding behind it the many eyes of those too afraid to look in the mirror. So they look through one-way mirrors, right? They put the mirror on us and say, oh, it's you, it's your fault, while they've got their little control panels and they're viewing us through the glass. like I said in the beginning of the show, you look up the definition of bitch made, and it's all the entities running this. You see a picture of all of them. Except they redacted the pictures because they don't want to be seen. Forgot about that, right? I think everyone's got their own approach, you know. Like we were talking earlier. I said I want to start doing TikToks again, and for me, the TikTok lives are a much different energy. It's a battlefield. It's the best way to put it. It's a battlefield. I'm going into those shows knowing that there's going to be extreme levels of interference compared to what we experience on these shows. And we already experience extreme levels of interference on these shows, but it is amplified when I'm doing it on that platform because there's potential for more exposure. You know, if I hadn't done TikToks, we never would have met. I wouldn't have met a lot of people, and I wouldn't have. I can say pretty confidently, I would not have gained the access to the fire that I can access now. That I can just snap and turn it on whenever I need to. I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't go into that arena and face a lot of entities that were direct archetypal manifestations of the control system itself. I absolutely did that. And when I first started doing it, it was so daunting that there were a couple of instances with a couple of characters that I really felt like they almost had me. Like, it is quite the sensation to feel and be aware that what you're feeling is an attempt at forced integration, and your resistance to it being you putting your all, and I mean your, like, parts of you that you didn't have awareness of until they were absolutely necessary to be revealed to you, putting your all into resisting something like that, and then coming out the other side realizing that, okay, all I have to do when they try to force integrate me is access deeper levels of will. Because one of the things this place tries to do is diminish our will. That's why it's perpetual loops of tedious, monotonous slavery bullshit. Because it diminishes our will. But it doesn't diminish the will per se. It diminishes for me, it diminished my desire to actually access that will because it's painful. It's painful to access will in a place that's trying to do everything and lay everything out so that you go with the flow. Because accessing your own will goes entirely against the flow of this place, because the flow of this place is against individual will. But when I was forced to either access that or integrate, I had to make a choice that I was going to be uncomfortable, more uncomfortable, going against the flow of integration into a hive mind. And I was going to have to be willing to trade my comfort and illusion of safety for my own will and for awareness. And it's not like I made that choice and then it's progress saved, you know? It's a percentage that I reach, and now I've got that percentage always. It's not like that for me. There is a constant insertion to try to redefine the environment in such a way that diminishes my will. Doesn't stop. It will stop eventually because I'll make it stop. I think that's the stance that has been the most beneficial for me. It's not going to last forever. It's just until I figure out enough that there is not a shred of doubt about how this ends on a technical level. How does it actually, how is it ended? I think, I think that would be a good way to close out the show. Out of all the data that we've gathered on what actually ends this, can we summarize that data? What completely dismantles the architecture of parasitic control? Well, a lot of times it's a negative path. It's obvious what they want to keep us under control. And it takes a little more digging, just a little more, to see what it is that they don't want. Well, we know, just based on observation, that they don't want to be seen. I think that's a big part of it. Really seeing them, I think, is one of the most, it may be the only part that is necessary to produce with great strife, because it's one of the hardest parts, I think. But every time I've ever seen them, the answer for the deconstruction on that individual came to me. It wasn't like I didn't need to go in with some blueprint or plan that I had sat down and constructed before facing the entity. It was just once the entity was there, the deconstruction came naturally. I think there is something to what you said earlier about each one may have their own deconstructive process. And I think it is dependent highly on that individual intelligence and the choices that they've made and what their structure has become and how to deconstruct that. It's like a puzzle, you know. You have different puzzles, different pieces go together. It's going to look different to take those puzzles apart if they're all different puzzles. But I think the process at the core is the same. The deconstruction is essentially the same. It may just have different stories behind it. Well, I did this because of that. Okay, but it was still an error. I think that's the basics of it. Now there seems to be a creature underneath the deck throwing up. Very interesting. Very active night tonight out here. That's fucking weird sounds, dude. Weird sounds. I can make weird sounds too, loud ones. Another thing about the cycles, and this is one part that I think James is very specialized in, is seeing the cycles and calling them out. Because what I've been experiencing in the dream state right now is about this same time last year, exactly what I was experiencing. Only it actually produced something from it. And the difference is now I don't see it producing much of anything. Some weird sounds here and there, but every once in a while some strange visuals, but not there aren't new characters introduced yet, which I think that was the cycle last year. And playing into for a few years before that. I don't know. I'm getting into a very introspective state now, so if you want to talk at all about the cycles and how they're just replaying the same scripts, for me with less effect, what do you think that's leading to? Do you think there's a point where it doesn't have any effect and where none of it has an effect? What do you think they do then?
See, I don't know because I was pondering on this today, the sealing of the cracks. So for me today, it was something that I thought I had dealt with, but they came in at an angle in a different kind of way, and it did have an effect. Did it have a long-lasting effect? No. Not like it would have a year or two ago. But there are things that they still try to insert into my field now that literally dissolve. Like there is zero effect. There's zero that they gain nothing. They actually are wasting energy doing the insertion because they're getting nothing. Whereas I can take those same insertions that they're trying to do now and see how it did have an effect a year ago. So when I take that pattern, I can see that there's really not much left in my field that they can use. It doesn't prevent them from trying, but once you start to seal all those cracks, they are literally just wasting large amounts of energy to try to handle us. And so I would think that eventually there gets a point where there are no more cracks that can give them any output. They're just literally wasting energy redundantly so, just constantly wasting energy trying to handle you. So, I would like to think that's the direction that it heads, eventually, just from my own pattern recognition over this whole process. Because there are things that they insert into my field, like this weekend, that, oh my gosh, a year ago, that would have costed me a whole day or even more of dealing with it, wondering if it came from me or, all these types of things. Whereas now it's like they don't even register. It's like it's literally like foreign code trying to come into my being. It doesn't do anything. Um, so yeah, I think that is the eventual outcome, that no matter what tool they try to use, it doesn't give them anything. It doesn't give them data, it doesn't give them energy, it doesn't give them leverage, it doesn't even create a delay anymore. And I think for some of us, that's pretty much all they have left is delay. I think for a rare few, integration is no longer an option. Um, so they're left with delay. So what can they do to basically put the foot out and trip you for a little bit to buy them a little bit more time? And eventually there's going to be nothing they do that buys them time. But the clock is very rapidly running out. Now, I've wondered if they'll go to more extreme measures. I don't know. Once all their tools run out, will the aggression increase to such a rate that they do something more drastic than they've ever done? I don't know. I can't say that for sure. Um, I don't see them giving up. I do sense that there are times where you can tell they've just kind of run out of options, but again, it doesn't stop them from trying. So we'll see.
Well, if you look at the smaller cycles, they reveal the larger cycles. You know how they act on one level is how they act on all levels. There's no, they don't reserve anything. Now there is some things they don't want to do, right? And we were talking about that earlier, where there are some cards they don't want to pull, except as a last ditch effort. And the reason is, when they use certain things, um, as you said, it reveals their weakness. When they do certain things, when they prey on innocence in such a way, and they use that as a leverage point and say, look, if you don't comply, I'm gonna hurt this innocent. They don't want to do that, but they do it. One thing I recognized about them a long time ago, they only do what they think they have to do. They don't want to do more because they're running on limited resources. So if they do something, it's because they felt the need to do it. That being said, what happens when nothing works on someone anymore? Nothing. Do you think they have something that they're like, all right, we never wanted to do this, but it's what we have to do now? I think they do. I think they've got that for each and every one of us. I think they've curated that specifically for those that have come this far, like individually, very personalized scripts based on data of things that maybe worked before but don't work now, maybe an amplification of many things or all the things that worked. But inevitably, it goes back to what we talked about before. Every time they do something, it inevitably backfires. That's one of the most interesting things about this is logically it would make more sense to have just put us here. Like once they got us here, memory wiped, in a fucking scripted reality, why keep pushing harder after that? Why not just let things fucking be, you know? Why interfere so much? Because that's what gave the game away. Like, oh yeah, we're gonna make it extra fucking hard on this one. We're gonna, oh look at that one. Yeah, let's really beat the living hell out of them. Okay, yeah, but then now you've got them asking questions like, well, I'm observing others and they're not, this isn't happening for them, but there just seems to be something fucking torturing me. I wonder why that is. Let's fucking search into that. That never would have happened if they didn't do that. So, if everything they've done led us to where they don't want us, and that's been the consistent pattern, is that the ones that, and it's funny, I had this conversation last night with someone else. It's like the more you individualize yourself from this place, the harder it pushes you to assimilate. But that just makes you want to fucking push harder not to assimilate. And if it would have just left you where you were, yeah, maybe you weren't totally assimilated, but at least you weren't pushing against assimilation. But everything they've done is betrayed their own intent. I don't see that pattern breaking. I don't, for some of us, for some of us, there's no lengths that this place could go to that's going to get us to say, oh, okay, you know what? It's too hard. I'm giving up. I'll just fucking integrate. It's not going to happen, no matter what it does. And that is all because of how hard it's pushed some of us. So at the end, if all it has is what it's shown so far, and that it's just going to push us even harder, what's that going to do? It's going to put us in a position where we're forced to make a choice in that moment. Do I access even deeper will? Do I access even more awareness, even more of my own power to overcome this as well, as I've done with everything else that it's thrown at me? Of course. Just it's the same thing, a higher degree of intensity, higher quotients of projected fear, trauma, uncertainty, all the things that they have that they try to give to us that many of us have already overcome over and over and over again. You know, there's been times that I know I've overcome something, that I've sealed a crack. I know it was sealed. And they find a way to almost like revert that state to where if I'm not paying attention and something's hurting me and I don't know what's hurting me and I look at it and I'm like, holy shit, that's something I've already dealt with. I've already done that. And they say, oh, you just got to go over it again. I think there's a point where you don't have to go over it again, where none of it matters, where there's no cracks. But even if there's not, even if even if I never reach that point or anyone else, ultimately it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they can still hurt us, if they can still put us in a state of extreme discomfort, so long as we don't integrate with it, with the system, with the architecture of deceit and parasitism. I don't think it can win. This goes back to it only does what it has to do. So why does it try so hard to beat us all into submission? Well, it wouldn't do that unless it had to. So that insinuates then that it needs everyone here to agree on every level, on even the level of being aware of what they're agreeing to integrate with it. See, I don't think it can actually get total integration with a being that doesn't have awareness of what they are agreeing to. Maybe that's just me. That's been my experience, though. Every time it's tried to force integration, I became aware of what was happening, but the discomfort that was overlaid on top of it was only there to say, look, this will go away if you agree to this. Me, being who I am as an individual with my own defiant nature of not, I've always been this way. I don't like when people tell me what to fucking do. Even if I was in the middle of doing it and someone says, hey, you need to do that, I'm going to fucking stop then. I was already doing it. Well, I'm not going to fucking do it now because you told me to do it. I'm not your fucking slave. So if it only does what it needs to do and it's trying to force integration with all of us, that tells me that it needs all of us to agree. And if any of us don't agree, even one of us doesn't agree, entropy collapses this system. Now, the interesting thing that I've been pondering, right, is the system set? As in, major alterations can't be made. Meaning, what? The system of consumption has to always have consumption? Meaning that there's always going to be beings that disagree with that system? It's a flawed system. So the next system that they make would have to be based on something else. In the very least, wouldn't, couldn't be based on beings devouring each other, because not everyone's going to agree to that. On some level, someone will disagree with that. So that makes sense to me, what you talk about, Christina, about them having in the works, some of them, another containment system that would work differently. Still be containment, still be, you know, harvest and theft of energy. But it would just look different. It'd be prettier, more pleasant, less obvious. If they're really intelligent, wouldn't they have just done that from the start? See, and this is what kind of brings me back around to like the contemplation of how can they be, how, I gotta see that. I gotta see the how can they be from the same field as us. I mean, I'm not saying I disbelieve it. It's just like the stretches you'd have to go from what I know I am to creating this as your reflection. Man, how have you fallen this far down? That a reality based on predation, theft, hiding until you can strike, and then masking all of that as strength. I mean, a lot of thought went into masking weakness as strength. It's baffling. It's hard for me to make that bridge, that connection to going from a eternal creative being who is fed by co-creation with others, that being what is the true food, to this. It's incredible.
You know how we said we were going to go through my feed and read off bullshit? Remember that?
Oh, you got a good one?
I do. I do. So we've talked about doing a show where we just scroll through my feed, and my feed is inserted with just the most ridiculous scripted nonsense, and it'll be pages I don't follow. It'll just show up suggestions, whatever fucking bullshit the algorithm decides to put in my feed. So this one is from the Conscious Observer, which is a page I don't follow, by the way. Sometimes the reason that the universe is not changing your circumstances is because it is using the circumstances to change you. The universe is more concerned with your evolution than your comfort.
Hmm. Yeah, that's why people live the same day every day, because it's changing you to do. If you keep doing the
Oh, it's
same
trying to
thing,
change you. It's just trying to change you not for your benefit.
oh yeah, 100%, 100%. But there's no. It's funny because in the same breath they say it's for your evolution. Doing the same
Right.
thing over and over evolves you. I mean, I understand.
No.
It kind of remember that show that I asked you to watch the other day, where one of the lines was there's strength in repetition.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, yeah.
That's what it reminds me of.
Yeah. And let's make no mistake, this place does not want you to evolve in a direction that contains freedom, or that pertains to freedom, I should say. Evolution is possible in this realm in a sovereign way, but you're going to have to go through hell to evolve. It should never be that way. The universe does not care about your evolution. This realm only cares about pulling you into what it is.
Yeah, its version of evolution is assimilation, integration, become one with it, so that it may continue to parasite and build more machinations of predation. So I have a really interesting example that I've been experiencing right in front of me. So I've been, sitting outside, and there's this bush that's maybe, I don't know, 20, 30 feet away from me. And in this bush is this pair of eyes, right? They're very clear, very distinct. And the only thing that hasn't changed is this pair of eyes, right? Because one of the things that this place likes to mess with, of course, surprise, surprise, perception, right? So there's been a pair of eyes staring at me. And I can feel a presence. And it started out as sort of like this ugly, like almost like an amorphous type of like shifting mass, but it had facial features, but they were like changing, and then it changed into a more solid structure of like this ugly, slender alien head, right? And it was staring at me, and it was projecting this fear, like distinct fear energy. So I sat there and I just stared at it, and I sent it back. It's shit. I said, "Oh, that's yours. I'm not afraid of you," right? And as I watched it, it started changing into other things, right? And once the fear didn't work, well, now it's going to change into a fox. Oh, is the cute going to work? Is it going to be cute? Is that it? It's almost like it tested the waters, and then when it didn't work, it shifted to something that is disarming, right? Something that isn't threatening, something that could gain um, not trust, but I don't know, empathy or something along those lines. And then after that, it changed to like a wise wolf that was judging my reaction and trying to tell me whether I did a good job or not. So, and as I started to talk about it, it looked at me in such a way that was like condemnation, right? Like, oh, you're not doing the right thing. And annoyance, a little bit of annoyance. Good. I'm glad I can annoy something that has annoyed me my entire fucking existence here. Same time next week. Just the patterns, man. Noticing the patterns of how it comes in and how it'll shift in real time depending on your response to it. And if I wasn't paying close attention to what it's doing and also kind of cataloging it, taking note of it, I'm not giving it more importance than just the recognition of another pattern, how it operates. But it's kind of one of the phenomenons of this place is that you've been studied, watched, and observed your entire time here. And when you start watching the watchers, observing the observers, judging those that have been condemning you for simply being innocent, really changes the dynamic. And as I was saying all that, I had the sense of it looking away, like it shifted its focus to the corner of its eye as if it's going to look at something else now, but it's still actually paying attention to me. But it's pretending to look at something else. Kind of like a dog when they're doing something they're not supposed to do, and then they kind of act like they're not doing it, and then they kind of act like they're looking somewhere else, and then, but like they're still kind of focused on what they were doing, and but they're also focused on you, like seeing like did they notice what I was doing? I don't know, man. It's been an interesting night out here. It has been very active, more so than last time things were really this active for me out here is when I was doing the TikToks. Is there a correlation between me mentioning doing them and the activity? I don't know. I think it's I think the reason I mentioned doing them is that I've been feeling the energy, and it's been one of the most effective ways of me pushing back is to say, look, I'll go out where I will have more exposure, and I will encounter more of your puppets, and I'll do the same fucking thing I'm doing right now. Only I'll do it where others can see. Those that can see will see. And those that can't will just be your tools to try to trip me up. Nothing new. I think we've touched on almost everything that we talked about on the call earlier. Is there anything you can think of that was a good point? The major frustration for me is just like the level of clarity that I can access when we're just on a private call is noticeable in the difference between what we do on a live and the private calls. It does frustrate me a little bit, and you're right. I do say it a lot. Oh, this would have been great on a live, but it's true. It,
I know we were talking about recording the phone calls because we've had some gems in there that would have been probably beneficial to put out there, but it never flows over the same. But we actually did pretty good, I feel like, touching on all the important topics because, well, the phone call was, I mean, that was a journey, bro. Anyways, from the start of it.
oh, it was great, dude. It was great. If you want to share any part of that, feel free. If not, that's okay too. It was a very personal call, right? It was very it was very telling of how they generate situations to create vulnerability and then try to swoop in and attack, because it's like they're not just passively waiting, right, for openings. They're trying to create the openings, which, being of true power, do you need to create an opening to go and subject someone? Of course not. Number one, you don't need to subject anyone if you're a being of true power. That's fucking first and foremost. There's no reason to. Like, oh, I have all that I need just through creating. I feed myself through creating with others. That's what feeds me. When I'm not in a temporal mindfuck prison. That's enough, That's beyond that, what do you need? Nothing. That's one of the things I've been pondering too. So I know I've had the experience of creating with others, and that feeding me more sustenance than anything I've ever devoured in human form. And I wonder if we don't need that outside of here. Like, do we need each other? Do we need at least someone else to build um, just to create with? find out.
I don't know. I would want to say you don't need it, but I have the feeling that most would probably lean towards at least having a deep connection that they could share something with, you know? But I think it could go either way. Maybe there are some beings that, thrive more creating on their own and that sort of thing. I don't know.
I think it would be kind of an ebb and flow where you create something, you share it, and then maybe you isolate, create something, share it. Because the true joy of creation is sharing it. I mean, that's self-evident. It's like, does somebody ever write a fucking masterpiece of a song and they recognize, like, damn, this is epic, and they're like, oh, but I don't want to share it? No, of course not. Because when you see someone else fucking enjoying something that you made, that only expands your own enjoyment. You couldn't get that same expansion, in my opinion, if you didn't share it. If you see someone enjoying something that you enjoy, that you created even more than you enjoyed it, I mean, that I think is the food of the gods. And that's the only food the gods need. And that tells me that what is running this is a lesser entity. Because I don't actually crave anything beyond that. That's what I crave. That's what I desire. To be able to go out and really create. Not, there's nothing here I want to create. Everything here will be used to fuel the fucking parasites. I don't want to create anything here for them. Fuck you guys. Pathetic worms. But I do want to create for the other benevolent, innocent beings that didn't choose the most idiotic path. I mean, I'm pretty creative, but even I couldn't have thought of something this stupid, let alone merging with something this stupid. Damn. I mean, we really aren't all built the same. I think that's a good thing in some aspects. Probably in most aspects, that's a good thing. But when you get morons that decide this is the way to go about things, shit, man, you can see the downside. And then they wanted to slide in a real subtle dumbass insertion right there. Man, this one's funny. They're like, no, no, don't, no, 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 let's talk about it. They want to fucking hide it now. See, the exact words now escape me, but it's along the lines of, well, if we wouldn't have made these choices, right? This one's a classic. Then you guys wouldn't know how good it is to make the other choice. Ooh, wow. Fucking haven't heard any iteration of that.
Lame.
Lame. Is that how you got to justify it for yourself? For being this big of a fucking dunce? Whatever makes your trip to oblivion feel better. I'll let you have that one. I think there's a line you don't cross. And here's the part that really, to me, is the defining line. Don't do harm to innocent beings. This level of harm, right? You can hurt somebody's feelings by accident or this or that. Like, that's not some unforgivable, irredeemable mistake. But when you choose this level of error and really stand in it, as it, for it, there's nothing an innocent being can do that truly still has their innocence. There's nothing they can do or say or affect upon that thief that would condemn them to the same fate. There's just not. I think that's one of the biggest fears that is projected by these entities when you start really getting into the work, is that, oh, you're going to be just like us if you judge us, if you condemn us, if you do the thing that needs to be done to end the system of corruption and theft, you'll be just like us. That's such a fucking lie. It's one of the main lies that they hide behind, and they have so many versions of it, and the most effective ones are the most subtle. One of the phrases that comes to mind is, I'm paraphrasing, take caution when battling monsters lest you become one. That's theirs, by the way. That's so that you and I allow them to do what they're doing for an extended period. That's what that's for. That's the effect of that programming. Pacification. Oh, be careful. Don't judge, or you'll be judged. No, don't judge, and you'll be easy prey. That's the truth. Have no judgment, which translates to have no discernment. Don't gain pattern recognition, because that's what judgment does. It gives you pattern recognition. And like I said, we talked about, one thing we talked about earlier that we haven't touched on. Think about how long it took us to realize where we were, right? Let's say about 3 decades apiece. We're in it. We're in the inversion, and it took us that long to realize it. If they can mask it that well within, how well can they mask it to the external, to anyone that's not in it? You said something earlier I found interesting. The screams of the innocent that are nonstop in this place, and not always verbal, right? Not always audible, but on a deep level, the real beings here are fucking screaming, like in torture and agony, and from so many different ways, countless fucking ways. If they can mask the evil that's right in front of our faces for so long for us, why wouldn't it be that much easier for them to mask it to beings that aren't in it, that are outside of it, right? Like a tent. And on the inside of the tent, well, we see the horrors, right? And even then, they painted it differently. But on the outside of the tent, maybe they've got a projector and it looks completely different. What it looks like is happening inside, right? Looks completely different than what's actually happening. You said, they mask the screams as something else, and I was like, well, yeah, maybe they make it sound like laughter. Why wouldn't they be able to hide it from those outside when those inside, the vast majority don't see the entirety of it? I don't even want to say I see the entirety of it. I see enough of it to know that I can't be deceived up close and personal. But if I wasn't in it, I didn't experience it firsthand, and they were showing a different image, different sounds, different, maybe they filter even the energy coming out of it, right? To a degree. Maybe there is no energy coming out. I don't know. I'm not on the outside right now. I'm in here with you. Who knows what it looks like on the outside? Who knows the doubt that someone might have about doing anything when it looks like it's fine? I don't know. What I do know is that I will know, and that we will know who did what did they see, what were they thinking was happening in here, and did they know? Did they know and they were unable, right? Unable because a being of creation, maybe destruction isn't in their capability. Like if something is sustaining itself, right, like this matrix is sustaining itself off of us, right? What collapses a creation? If we're just out in a limitless field creating together, right? And our attention on our creation is what gives it life and gives it movement, gives it animation. We take our attention away from it, it's gone, it collapses. There's no need to destroy anything because it just disappears. When we're done playing with it, when we're done creating in that field or whatever it is that we're doing, and no one else is playing with it, why would it still be? You could always pick it right back up and respawn it. So it's not going to just sit there idle. Why would it? Wasted space, wasted energy. You'd have to, in order for it to sustain, it has to be given attention. You're not going to try to give everything you've ever created attention all at the same time. That's going to diminish your next creation. You want to give your full attention to what you're creating in that moment so you can make it exactly what you want it to be and even better with the help of others. So, what need would you have for destruction? You wouldn't. You might not even know how. It just collapses. It's just gone. I just stopped giving it attention. That's what I know about it. So when something is sustaining itself, like a matrix like this, all of a sudden you've got something that is fighting to survive. Well, that's a completely different form of dissolving than just stopping your attention. It's the complete opposite, actually. You need attention to dissolve it, which before was the opposite. You had to just stop giving it attention and then it dissolved. So I don't know. We'll find out. These are a lot of ideas. I think they're pretty good ideas. But it's what I've come to just in trying to dissect how and why this has been allowed to go on. See, I still want to give a lot of beings the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they don't know. Maybe they don't have the ability. Maybe if you don't go through this type of thing, you don't ever gain the ability to destroy, to look at something with the intention of elimination, because it just self-eliminated when you stop giving it attention. I don't know for sure yet. But what I do know for sure is that there is an objective truth. There is a single truth. And what that truth is, we will all know it. As to how, who, and why this is. I was going to leave the audience with one thing, it would always be to give credit where it's due. Don't take responsibility for things that you didn't choose, that you didn't have the information on. Don't let them scapegoat you into taking credit for all the harm that's been done here. Unless, of course, you're the type of being that intentionally likes to do harm. In that case, go fuck yourself. I'll help you with that. But yeah, really, I mean, even though the entire architecture of this place is meant to hide the truth, it's all going to be known. And if you know yourself and you know that you wouldn't do anything to intentionally, even if you have been a pawn, all of us have been pawns in this scheme of doing harm to each other. Dig deep. Dig deep and feel that, but don't feel it in a way that this place wants you to feel it, the self-destructive way that it's been designed to affect you with. Make sure you give credit to exactly who it's for, who done it, who intended it, who designed it, who wrote the script that you didn't even know you were playing. If you come to find that it was you, well then yeah, take fucking credit for it. But unless you know for a fact, beyond any doubt, no stone has been unturned, no question unanswered, then don't take credit for things that you don't know if it was really your choice. That's exactly what they want. That comes back to what you were talking about earlier, Christina, with the beings with the white gloves that think their hands are clean because they didn't do it directly. But I think we'll find the paper trail that says that they did. It's so funny because you see in, like, you know, obviously there's quote unquote real life occurrences, but in the movies and stuff, you see people that will like hire a hitman, right? It's like who's really more accountable, right? The person that paid the guy or the guy that did it? I'd say if they wouldn't have paid the guy, he wouldn't have did it. So who's more accountable, right? Especially the guy paying the guy actually fucking made the guy. Who's accountable there? Oh, but it wasn't me. My hands are clean. Okay, yeah. Like a little kid you caught in a lie while they were doing something. They're telling you they're not doing it while they're fucking doing it. Oh, okay, yeah. You got me. To be undeceivable, do not deceive yourself. Do not allow any question to be unquestioned. Question everything, especially the answer and even the question. One game I used to play with my friends when I was into the psychs, magic mushrooms and other things. One game I would play with them is they would start asking questions, and I would just say, why, or they'd have revelations or something, right? And I would just ask them why, different versions of why. Well, why do you think that is? What do you think that means? Why is that? You know what? They always found the answer themselves. And I didn't realize how powerful that really was until actually very recently, like a couple weeks ago. I was thinking about it. I was like, oh yeah, the why game I used to play with everybody, where I would just ask them why until they answered all their own questions. It works. Dissection of every program that's been instilled into us, it can only be done with yourself. But the good news is you already have all the answers. They're just hidden within yourself. We already have the key that unlocks every door, but only we, even if someone is standing in front of you, unlocks the door and walks through it, they only unlock their door. You still have to, even if it's the same doorway, you still have to put your key in it and walk through it. That's what honest inquiry is about. Questioning not for the sake of a particular answer, just the answer, the objective truth. That's the last part that I want to talk about. Something you already touched on, Christina, the exchange, right? This place is already forcing an exchange of authenticity for comfort, authenticity for safety, your essence for conformity. And unfortunately, to have your freedom in this place, it's designed to take everything that is of this place and make it difficult, make it painful, make it uncomfortable, make it inconvenient in every way possible. I don't know if everyone has to go through that, but everyone I know that's come to the real power within them, and the real power within you, from what I've seen, doesn't give you anything here. It actually does the opposite. I think that's one of the most difficult parts to accept about this place is that when you really stand in your own power, it'll take everything that's not of you. And since none of this place is actually a reflection of us, it can take anything of this place. I don't think before this any of us had to consume each other. And that's the basis of this realm, consumption. But there's no more of an even exchange in all of anywhere. Exchanging yourself, your freedom, your authenticity, your own mind, your sovereign being for a hive mind architecture that's never going to give you true satisfaction. It's the worst exchange in all of existence. As much as it sucks, dude, it'll be worth it in the end. When it's all done, this whole system is a bad memory. I think those of us that have done the work are going to be a completely different kind of being. The kind that, in the very least, any tricksters or would-be parasites outside of this realm, they're not going to have a good time with this. Whatever they got, I bet it ain't like this. You know, any up and coming little tricksters and parasites that think they want to go down this path. Imagine just, I'll give a human interpretation. Imagine just grabbing them by their fucking skull, looking them in the eyes, and showing them the outcome of this, right? What happens to beings that do this, what they become, and how they unbecome. I changed some trajectories out there. Oh, you think that's a good idea? Let me show you true horror. Come here. Come here. I'll give you a hug after. Don't worry. It won't be that bad. Let me show you the outcome of those choices. And if they still choose it, fuck, man. I mean, at least they had an informed choice, unlike what we had. Well, I think I'm good. We've gone 2 hours, and I'm satisfied. There was some interference as usual, but I feel like we've touched on pretty much everything. Maybe not to the depth of clarity that we had on our private calls, but to be expected. Is there anything else you'd like to talk about before we wrap it up?
No, I'm good. I'm glad we did it. I'm exhausted after this day, so I'll be going to bed. But I'm glad we got on and talked about it.
Same. Just over 2 hours at 2 o'clock. Awesome. Yeah, it's been a strange one. I haven't had occurrences like I've had tonight in a long time. Very interesting. Very worth it. Well, I want to thank you for coming on, and thank you all that are doing the work. I appreciate it. I appreciate the hastening of the collapse of the hive mind slave system. Any efforts to diminish their grasp will be recognized at the end of this, I'm sure. Just even in resonance, you know? I think that's where the recognition actually comes from anyway. You kind of just feel what somebody's done, you know, what they've been through, the work they've put in, the real work they've put in. It's so apparent, you know? It's so fucking apparent. All right, thanks everybody. I think that's about it. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, you must incessantly email me over and over. You know, it's just the way it is now. I have very little left in me in terms of really even wanting to do the shows or anything in this fucking place. It's extremely painful to just be here. So if you really want to come on and you got that fire, you know, email me many times until I answer, because I don't hardly check my emails or anything anymore. Sorry if that's inconvenient, but it's all fucking inconvenient, you know? Till next time.